Today I have Paul Crocker, Associate Creative Director, and Steve Dyck, Character Director from 343 Industries, here with me to talk Halo Infinite. Guys, we have three different accents in this room. Well, I'm assuming, Steve, that you're American. Is that a bad assumption? Canadian.
I'm Canadian.
Two accents in the room. Two Steves, both Canadians, and an English Paul. That makes it easier. Guys, you've probably just woken up to... Well, not probably just woken up. You've woken up to really good Halo Infinite review scores, is what I was trying to get at. How are you feeling, is the first question.
I mean, technically, I haven't really been to sleep. So I've been... since... I kind of fell asleep last night, and then the reviews hit, and then I couldn't sleep. I don't really know why, because for it was an entire kind of wave of relief. But then I guess I just kept reading all night, and then it was too late. But I mean, the simple answer is pretty good. Like after, the team's worked incredibly hard. It's been a kind of passion project for a lot of people, and really just knowing that people like it, it's a kind of traumatic experience, building something for a long time and then releasing it into the wild. And it's just great to know that people like it.
Nice. Steve?
Yeah.
Probably similar, I'm imagining.
Yeah, it's very similar. Like Paul said, we've been working towards this and waiting for this for a long time now. And even though you might feel one way internally, you're always your worst critics, right? So you're never really sure. So this morning, seeing some of the review scores, and just the general consensus of people having fun with the game is awesome to read.
Nice. And there's obviously been a preview, but those multiplayer guys were getting all of the good Halo love for the last couple of weeks. So it must be nice to get your own share of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now
Absolutely.
It's probably too hard to. It's definitely an assumption. It's not even an assumption. It's too hard to say that only one thing or one important thing happened over the course of this past year during the delay. But in your own perspectives, what to you is the most important, the biggest, the best usage of 343's time in that delay period to release the product that you have or you're about to in a couple days?
Yeah, a couple of days. So I can start answering that. I'm sure Steve will have a perspective, but mine's going to be a bit of a bigger answer sorry, but really it wasn't a full year. I know it sounds like one, but obviously you have to also finish the game. So yeah, and actually the other reason why it wasn't a full year is it didn't happen instantly, right? That we got the extra time, and we were still working on completing the game, which actually gave us a really good. Put us in a really good position, because not only were we working on finishing the game, we were able to play it and spend a lot of time playing it as consumers. And what that meant was that, for example, Steve and I could be playing through it and going, well, this bit's too difficult, or that bit's not landing well enough. And again, it gets really easy for us to say, well, we must have changed tech or something, we must have changed this or that. But actually, we tried to focus on very specifically on the stuff that was actually working and make it better. And in most cases, and then we stack ranked and prioritized everything that we really wanted to do around those and how to improve them. And then, basically pushed ahead with the whole team moving in that direction. So, for example, we knew, we've known for a long time the game is more fun if you can use the equipment and you understand it. But I think originally it's hard to tell based on time we've worked on the game, but there was a point in time where you went looking for the dead Spartans and that you get the equipment from. But we moved them onto the main path so that everyone got the equipment as soon as possible with tutorialization, so that then if you liked it and wanted to go and get more equipment or upgrade your equipment, you could, right? Because it would be out there, as opposed to you found it. So we guaranteed that every player had it. And it seems obvious when you're looking at it from where we are now. But at the time we wanted to encourage exploration, but it wasn't really working, and it meant that when you were in these situations and the players that did get it didn't know fully how to use it. So again, we just doubled down on that kind of thing. We doubled down on the bosses and some elements of the story that weren't fully working. And just again, we've been in an incredibly challenging position, like everyone else has, because it's not like even if we wanted to make 20 new scenes or anything else, which we didn't, by the way, but if we did want to, we could put actors in a mocap stage, because we couldn't. So it was just looking at the things and figuring out how we could work with the resources we had just to improve what we had. Like adding boss introductions was one of them. Well, not so much adding boss introductions, adding more boss introductions, because not every boss had one at the time.
Cool.
A good example is the Jaeger one. That whole sequence in the House of Reckoning was a lot more truncated in the original, but we got time to actually look at what we had and make it actually creepier and more memorable than it was before. Anyway, that's how we went through the process, and it was really just play, consider, play again, and then target making that thing better. Obviously, we added a few things here and there, but really we didn't add a lot. We actually took some stuff out.
Nice. The Craig the Brute soundstage at the top of the tower was always there from day one, I'm sure.
Well, that bit wasn't, but and to be honest, we didn't even know that the artists had added that in until I'd say it's too late, but it's awesome. But again, the whole team is trying to put love into the project, and that was one of those things that we just leaned into. Steve can talk much more about Craig, but we didn't show ourselves in the best way, but also there were just some bugs and stuff that were causing that. And but instead of just hiding from it, we just wanted to embrace it and say, we know, so let's make it better.
And I just want to assert that, Steve, you don't have to talk about Craig if you don't want to. If that's not your answer, by all means, go ahead.
I would like to say that the tribute to him was before Craig was even a meme. We saw it coming. We
Nice.
did it. No, to get back to your original question, I think I agree with all the stuff that Paul touched on. I think the one that stands out to me in terms of the most specific, if it was one thing, would probably be the boss fights. Boss fights are always a very challenging thing to pull off, especially in a first-person shooter. I think, some of our boss fights are stronger than others, sure, but I think in general we really leveled them up over the course of that year. From reading through reviews and stuff like that, and just kind of user feedback, the feedback that we've gotten that the team really appreciates, and I really appreciate it because it was our goal, is when the player reflects on it. Well, these aren't just bullet spongy bosses where just the health's just been spiked. There's more to it than that, which is exactly our goal, and that was a big part of where we spent that extra time. Like Paul talked about some of the intros and stuff like that, but more in the moment to moment combat. We wanted to get away from okay, there's a brute officer. I fought brute officers before. This one's just way tougher, and it's got a way tougher shield. We wanted there to be layers to it, and I think we achieved that with varying levels of success. But I think it also does a really good job of kind of setting a standard for okay, cool, we can do this kind of stuff. We can have named characters, that the player, has a little bit of love-hate relationship with them, where they're I want to take this guy out. And it helps us fill out our universe with things that aren't, just core combatant type of characters. It gives us the opportunity to explore other cool named enemies, basically.
And
you just reminded me, Steve, sorry, that when we were talking about the bosses, how difficult Dramonius used to be, and I suddenly had this thought of Greg playing it. And it went to produce it, and it was brutal as a fight. So again, it wasn't always just making things more difficult, more challenging. It was making them more fun to play.
Yeah,
and
his shield used to recharge incredibly fast.
Oh. Okay.
You'd duck behind some cover to reload, and you'd look back and shield back.
That's just mean. It makes sense though, because the chief is known amongst the Covenant and the Banished, and there's some names obviously that the UNSC would know, but this is cool that it's adding more to that. But keep going. Steve, you said last time the game is say yes to the player, which I immediately latched onto. And Paul, you've kind of spoken to in the time for refining. There was some things that maybe said no to the player and they had to be tweaked, which kind of just piggybacks onto a question. And you can speak more to the yes no thing if you want as well. But Paul, you've been on Arkham City, which I thought did a tremendous job of opening up the Arkham games. So you're doing things in an open world that seem true to Batman as the character, not just, here's a side mission that kind of, you just go do it, don't ask why, just do it. It feels like the things that you have the Chief do on Zeta Halo need to be done. It's not just I just send that Marine to do it, I'm the Chief, I'll do it. So how did you kind of decide upon those things?
Well, I mean, I think the simple answer is none of the people on this call invented Chief, but like these are these are well-defined characters, right? Your example of the Batman stuff is the same. So we didn't have to invent Chief wouldn't go and collect berries from a tree in order to build more bullets, right? It's not a thing we had to worry about. Our thing was Chief wouldn't do that, right? And actually, I think the nuance of what would Chief do and what wouldn't Chief do is kind of, I'm not going to say flexible, but there is obviously depth to him as a character. But we very much, we talked about fetch quests and stuff and why we didn't want to do them. We talked about the game always saying yes because we wanted Chief. If Chief wants to get in a vehicle, he's going to get in a vehicle. Nothing's going to stop him, and the grapple shot helped. But it was as much saying what Chief would do as what he wouldn't do, and like really when we come to the story itself, it's very much about the position Chief finds himself in. I mean, it is when we look at it, it's a kind of balancing act because we have a 20-year-old franchise. We have people who love Chief. We have a proportion of people who've read every book. We have a proportion of people who've never read a book. We have people who played Halo 1 through 3 and never touched 343 games. We have people who play them every day and cycle through them all. We have people who know every detail. So we wanted to be true to everyone's kind of interpretation of the character, which means, obviously, it means that sometimes we're going to have people saying, I don't like thing X, whatever it is. But when it comes to the story, we really wanted to make this love letter to Chief and Cortana, and what made, we used Green Man and Blue Lady as our kind of our guide, because it's about what you see when you squint at the game. It's like what stands out as being important. Chief's on a mission when this game starts, whichever way you want to look at it, whether you played Halo 4 or 5 or you played Halo Wars 2 or any of that. Chief's on a mission to kill his best friend. You may not know about anything to do with why, but you will by the end of the game. But the point is, the depth is in there. When you look at Chief, we have a character with no face, but we still want to get the kind of emotional connection you have with that character when you move the camera around and when you see it. And we really worked hard, really hard to make the scenes feel still like you would attach to the player, even though you're not. So the camera movement and the closeness and that kind of thing, but also just making sure you didn't feel like you were just looking at an action figure, which is it's a very fine line between a suit of armor and a character, right? And that was the people on the narrative team that worked on that stuff, exactly. They really worked so hard to ensure that when you look in Chief's eyes, or when you look in his visor, you're thinking, I know what I know what I think he's thinking, as opposed to the game saying, I'm going to tell you how he's thinking. So you finished it, right? You said that at the beginning.
Yeah,
so even
done.
where he does things, which we're not going to talk about on this, which are potentially, challenging, given that it's his friends and all that stuff, it's because of the history he has and because of what's happened to him over the last games, that he is, preparing to make sacrifices that he wants to make.
Nice. I have 8 million questions, but Steve, sorry to cut you off, Paul. Green Man, Blue Lady, how does the pilot fit in? Probably a question for Steve, I would imagine, into this new mix.
It's honestly, that's probably more of a Paul question too, because it's more of a narrative beat. But I mean, I can speak to it a bit, and I think it's kind of what you guys have already been talking about, with Chief being faceless, being a man of few words. He needs characters around him that kind of help give you the narrative, express how they're feeling, so you can get a better sense of okay, this is what's going on. Because Chief isn't going to get overly emotional about any given thing, right? So he needs to reflect on things around him, and that's honestly where even beyond the pilot, and Paul can speak to the pilot too, but Marines as well, right? They're a really strong, especially within the course of gameplay, they're a really strong narrative tool just with their VO dialogue that reinforce Master Chief being a badass, being the hero. The stakes are higher because he's there, just through what they say and celebrating that Chief's there, and they're like, yeah, Chief's here, kind of thing. Makes you feel great as a player and reinforces him as that hero.
You can feel that sense of relief, like literally as you walk into a fob or something. Like you can just you can't see the Marines just go, but you can kind of imagine it, which is great.
You can also just drive right through them in a Warthog and hear them say he's here, and then go he's not here.
I've dropped a wasp on a couple, sadly.
I just want to very quickly add to that pilot thing. The whole purpose of the pilot as a character for us is to represent us, right? The pilot sees Chief as a way home, as hope, which is what he's supposed to be, but he doesn't really. And obviously his backstory is revealed in the game, but he thinks everything's great now because he's had a pretty bad time, and then suddenly everything's not great because he's like ferrying around a guy who's jumping out and blowing stuff up, and everyone's trying to kill him. And at the same time, then you have the weapon who is like this naive character who's looking up to Chief in the same kind of way that the pilot does, but she's excited to go on these adventures because she doesn't know the burden he's carrying either. So then you end up in this kind of weird, and it's not quite like this, but kind of angel and a devil on his shoulder. We even had an image like this once many years ago, but it was really just having these two different perspectives on what it means to be Chief, right? And seeing it through as an idealized kind of character, and also from a very human perspective.
Excellent. All right, elephant in the room time. Sorry, we put a post about it last night. It's gone insanely crazy.
There's an elephant in the room.
There's an elephant in the room. I'm not sure which room. There's 3 virtual rooms. First, can I just confirm quickly that you can't replay missions in campaign at this point in time?
So you cannot replay missions in campaign at this point in time. There is a number of reasons. I'll go very quick because then we're running out of time.
Yeah, sorry.
It is part of what is coming later. The main reason is because being a more open game and a non-linear game, it became incredibly challenging. It's not that it doesn't work, it's just that it's not finished. And we made the decision to make a better game, to improve the quality of the game so we can then add the features, just like co-op, right? And that is disappointing for us as the people who made it, but it was also the better option for us to make a better game and add that later. There are some compromises in place where things you collect, it doesn't change the fact you can't replay a mission with ease, obviously, but that is coming. But things like collectibles that you have collected are always stored in your profile. So if you start a new game, you will still have all the things you have collected stuck in your profile. So if you missed one data pad, you would only have to go find that one data pad to get your achievement and stuff, it's a compromise, and we're well aware of that, but it was there to try and help people.
No, the fact that there's a good answer to that, like it's coming, is good. Just quickly, just to make sure. So if I think there's only 4 saves that you have in your campaign. So if I overwrite save 2 with a new play and I've found something in the save 2 file, is it just cumulative across your gamer tag? So it doesn't really matter. You can play with those saves however you want. Okay.
It's your profile. I mean, I'm saying this based on that's how it's supposed to work. I thought I keep the same one. But that's how I was promised that's how it works as well. So your profile is the important thing. Your profile stores your progress. The save is just where that version of campaign is.
That's the intent. You guys took my 94% complete save away from me today, so I'll get off it. In terms of the campaign collectible, relaunching missions thing, is that coming with co-op, or is that coming before co-op, or is it actually timed and part of the co-op update?
It's all part of the stuff that's being worked on at the moment, and obviously we haven't announced a date. Yeah. And the reason I'm being a bit cagey is, I don't know exactly, but people are working on it even now. So it's coming is the better answer, is the only answer we can give.
That 343 is listening, and you know that's an issue for people, and that you're working on it. That's like the best resolution that we could get from today. So thank you so much for that.
I just like to throw, we listen to everything. It's hard to, obviously, it is really hard to react to every single person, but we genuinely built the game for the fans, right? This is everything about the campaign is for the fans, right? And we have a lot of them, and they have a lot of different histories. And I know that personally, this isn't a 343 perspective, it's a my perspective. I know that some things aren't going to be what every single person wants, and some things are exactly what some people want. And we try to make sure there's something for everyone. We've used phrases like it's a love letter to Halo many times in the past. And it just doesn't have all the words you want. Maybe.
Not yet.
The thing that I'd add to that is, these things like replayability of missions and co-op and stuff like that, obviously it's not a surprise to us that the fans are disappointed that they're not included at launch. And it's not a decision that we would ever go into lightly and be like, people won't mind if it's not there. Like, no, we know, we feel it too. And in making those decisions, we're like we wish it could be there because we want players to have all that stuff. But, like we did with campaign with the extra time, right? Like we want to make sure that when it is in players' hands, it's not a broken experience. And then, because then that's just worse. Because then they're like, well, why did you release this? It's broken. This wasn't finished. So while all the stars aren't aligning of it all being there together on day one, when it is available for the players to play, it will be a polished experience. It's like, okay, cool. And ideally, fans are feel that it was worth the wait.
Awesome. We're over time, so sorry to end it on like such a kind of note, but Infinite's awesome. Well done, both. Thanks so much. Best of luck for what's to come, and hopefully you get a chance to rest over Christmas and just kind of like enjoy the sentiment that's coming in. Paul, Steve, thanks so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.